Alia Malik, education reporter, San Antonio Express News. Susan Beavin, president of the San Antonio Conservation Society. We were just talking about the struggles that the inner city schools are facing due to declining enrollment. How are the districts dealing with this? And how's that going to affect their ability to educate their children?
Well, the most pressing concern for these school districts, as I kind of indicated before, has been budgetary. So that's kind of the first thing they have to look at. If we have declining enrollment, how can we afford all of these schools that we've had? And what can we do to kind of respond to this basically budget shortfall, which is an emergency situation, and at least last year in some of these school districts. Looking past that, they basically need to kind of look past stemming the budget hole to, you know, how are we going to not have declining enrollment for years and years and years in the future. SAISD, for example, already had kind of a strategy in place to open up new specialized schools, kind of like magnet schools, which are already getting some buzz in the city. The Cass Tech School, the Advanced Learning Academy, Young Men's and Young Women's Leadership Academies. And they had hoped that that would attract at least a small number of families back to SAISD who had already chosen to send their kids to charters or private schools or just other districts. They're doubling down on that strategy to really, they basically say that if not for those schools, they would have lost even more students last year. South San ISD, which named a new loan finalist for superintendent recently, they've also kind of started specialized academies in their middle schools with what they hope will be the same result.
And SAISD has gone so far as to convert public schools into charter schools, which is very controversial.
Yeah, they would say that it still is an SAISD school. That school still technically belongs to SAISD, but it's being managed by Democracy Prep Public Schools, which runs a whole bunch of charter schools all over the country, and they're based in New York. This would be Democracy Prep's first school that is run this way, where they're still kind of under a traditional public school district.
So what are the problems that they face in a situation like this? I imagine if it's new, there's probably challenges they have to overcome.
With the new school, yeah, there was a lot of teacher backlash against it, which made a lot of headlines in the spring, and that kind of makes. So basically only 2 of the teachers that had been at Stewart Elementary School before, when it was just a traditional public school in the normal sense, returned. Now that school had been struggling with high teacher turnover anyway. So, but I think that was kind of a, in not a normal circumstance. Some of the parents were also kind of put off by all the backlash against it when it happened, but I think a lot of them came around and registered their kids in the school anyway.
I was just going to ask quickly, are they bringing teachers in from other districts or from out of state, or if they've only hired like 2? Right. Where are they bringing them?
That's a really good question. We know that the principal came from Rogers Academy, which was another school in SAISD, a school that had been doing decently well. A lot of teachers that teach for charter networks in general, like IDEA and KIP, that are here in San Antonio, come from other parts of the country, and there's a substantial portion of them that come from Teach for America. So I'm not really sure the mix of teachers that are from the area versus the teachers that are not.
Susan, if we could talk a little bit, the Conservation Society is obviously committed to preserving historic neighborhoods, and King William is the neighborhood that I think you're most focused on right now. Talk a little bit about what are some of the issues with the expansion of downtown, with some of the things that are happening with infill in that area. What is the Conservation Society concerned about in King William, Monte Vista, some of the other neighborhoods near downtown that are being affected by the growth that's happening in the downtown area?
Well, interestingly, you should ask, because we had our neighborhood liaison, which is one of our 30 committees chaired by one of our 30 directors, met last night at the River House there in King William. And we were talking about what should be the focus of many of the districts, not just King William, but many of the historic districts. Infill development seems to be quite an issue and has been. And it's not so much it's really the style of development and where that development occurs. So if you're getting infill in the middle of a neighborhood, in the middle of a block, and it's not appropriate, then that doesn't work very well. And there's just not enough set of rules. So it may be different at zoning than it would be at Historic Design and Review Commission.
How serious a problem is this?
It's growing. You know, it's been a big battle. There have been several neighborhoods that have really split over the issue, not just infill, but as you were talking about earlier, short-term rentals and other things. So Dignowity has had some inner struggles, as is Government Hill. So jury is still out. One of the people who attended the meeting last night was showing what good architecture could do if someone wanted to build, say, a 6-unit complex in the middle of a block. So a lot of it has to do with design. The neighbors looked at one way saying, this looks very good, it fits, and it's appropriate with 6 units. The other way, which they ended up going with, was not. It was just this monstrosity in the middle.
And I'm sure the Conservation Society will keep an eagle eye out for that.
We do make statements. Patty Zients is our first vice president. I did that for 2 years, and so we go to Building Standard Board, Board of Adjustment, HDRC, zoning and planning, and a few other ones as well.
Susan Beavin, thank you very much for joining us, President of the San Antonio Conservation Society. Alia Malik, education reporter for the San Antonio Express News. Thanks for joining us on The Conversation Continues.